And so let's talk to this particular story. So here's another article produced around 13 billion reasons to change. So negative gearing has become so common in Australia that 1 in 6 payers are landlords, and 40% of them are negatively geared. So that still means that 60%, we'll come back for that, are paying tax on their income. So 40% aren't paying, but 60% are paying tax. So they're obviously contributing to the tax take that's happening around the country. But it's this annual list of anomalies. So what they do is they produce this annual report. And so a lot of people have gravitated to this annual report. A lot of journalists report on this as well. And it does annoy me a bit here because what it's basically saying is, in the event that we said negative gearing wasn't available, there'd be $3.6 billion that would come back. And if there wasn't a 50% capital gains concession, there'd be $10 billion that we'd get back, or whatever that would look like, right? And so I went and had a look at this report because by way of example, they also assess work-related expenses. So by way of example, in that work-related expenses, there'd be $8.3 billion worth of work-related expenses in 2023 and $8.5 billion were work-related expenses. Now,
can you report that correctly, Ben? That was 8.3 worth of revenue foregone.
Foregone. So what they're basically saying is that, you won't be able to claim your uniform, or you won't be able to claim your car expenses or whatever as part of you going about your day-to-day activities. So we've got to remember that property investment is running a small private rental accommodation business. So it's fair and reasonable that you'll be able to cover or reclaim some of those costs. Because imagine if they did a foregone story around, businesses. Now, what would happen if businesses could not claim their tax deduction? Imagine all the foregone revenue there, or actually imagine there'd be no profitability in some of those businesses. So it really is silly. And the same sort of things. And there's another example, 4.2 million donors, who do a great job in donating gifts to worthy causes. There's $1.95 billion worth of government revenues foregone there as well with tax deductible donations. So I just find that this narrative is just unhelpful in terms of that particular story, because the reality is if you're running a small business, you should be able to claim any costs associated with earning the income off that small business.
But surely there's some benefit to the government, Ben, of being involved in the property market. I mean, surely it can't be all sort of just handouts.
Well, it's not, Bryce. Funny you should mention that. Let's take a great look at these two slides. Again, coming off that data that we saw in 2021, 2022. So we can see here, look at this story here. So this is individuals, right? In this tax year, capital gains revenues received from real estate. And that is $46 billion in terms of capital gains taxes being paid by people who have experienced a capital gain. Now, small caveat here, it doesn't separate out commercial property from residential property. But we know that the vast majority of, you can see there, it was collected from individuals. And look at the size of that just for individuals. So usually you would buy a commercial property potentially in a company or a self-managed super fund or some type of partnership. It's unlikely most people buy commercial properties in their own individual name. So one would argue that a lot of that tax revenue, it's significant, like dwarfs the so-called $3 billion that you're going to get in savings in negative gearing, because the value of homes as they keep growing, if they sell them down, it causes a capital gain, and ultimately the government gets to collect their revenue on the way out for that property investor.
So, Ben, I've got a headline for you then. If
Sure.
If it's $46 billion that they collect, if they take away the rules that allow that to come in, wouldn't that be $46 billion foregone to the government?
Well, I mean, if property prices slow down significantly or something like that, that's the other side of the equation that doesn't get talked about a lot.
They're not going to collect that revenue.
They're not going to collect that revenue if the marketplace isn't healthy. But there's still, don't get me wrong, we still got to make sure we find an affordability, solve the affordability issue, and we look at innovation in terms of making the construction of property cheaper. But here's the other story here, Bryce. You can see, look at this table here. So this is the negative gearing. So this is the losses versus the gains. So in 2017-18, $3.6 billion. So that's what they often claim in their articles. And then it went down to $3 billion. And then it went down only to $200 million. And then in 2021, they got $3.2 billion of additional tax paid on that rental income.
So they never mentioned that.
No. And then the $6 billion additionally in 21-22. So that is taxes being received by people who have been in a property investment business where they're getting positive cash flow. And as they get positive cash flow, they're paying tax on that. So if I'm starting up my small business, I've got an opportunity to start a small business. And in the earlier stages, I might run at a loss. But over time, as I pay down debt and I pay down something, eventually the passive income will start coming through, and then I'll start to pay that tax.
Now, folks, if you have a look at the bottom right-hand column, you've got 3.2 and 6, right? So that means they've collected 9.2. The previous 3 years combined is, what's that, 6.8.
Yep.
So if you factor in the following year where interest rates went up, that'll likely move into strong negative again.
Yep.
So over a 6-year period, they're probably breaking even, but they don't talk about that.
No, but no. So and everyone talks about what the money is going to contribute to. So obviously that $46 billion is going to contribute to NDIS, it's going to contribute to education and health systems, but it just doesn't make the narrative because it doesn't suit their story, that narrative of what they're trying to say. So I think that's important.